So, hi, Sid. We're back for round two. You interviewed me about my journey and thought it might be fun to talk about your journey because people love hearing about, although everybody's journey is different, people do love hearing about other people's journeys so that they can see if there's anything that resonates for them. And what was exciting for me was that you'd met Byron Katie on your journey.
Yes.
So it'd just be interesting to see where she fits in on that journey and maybe just ask some questions around that. So yeah, where did it all
Colette,
begin?
Colette, this is just fun. We get to hang out. We're recording for our friends, and we get to play for a while. I just love get to hang out with you again.
Mm.
More, hopefully a lot more. But this is just fun. So just the fun of
Oh,
it.
lovely,
And
thank you.
um, and I know we both have been that Katie's been helpful for both of us. And
Yes,
I
definitely, yes. She was brilliant for me. So I just wondered where was she right at the beginning of your journey? Because I think you seem to have actually visited her house, or we really didn't say very much about the story because we wanted to save it for everybody else. But can you fill us in at all?
There was once upon a time, there was a young Sid that didn't have any of these wrinkles in his forehead. And he was earnest and he just got out of law school, right? And he
Oh,
studied
wow.
mediation. And so his conflict resolution was my thing. And I had just spent a year traveling with a famous mediator named Marshall Rosenberg of nonviolent communication. And I was I was being trained to be one of his successors. Like I was really very earnest and serious about all this, right?
Mm.
And so it was very clear. I'm just going to do that. And then I saw a video of Byron Katie doing a mediation. And my poor mind, this kind of like law school lawyer kind of person sees this and doesn't know what to do with it, right? It's like, what is this? It's just the most effective mediation I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And she was just love. She was just love. And anything that people said, it was just met by kind of an adoration from her. And and I watched what would happen in people, even really angry people, right? Well,
Yeah.
you've seen it as they
Yeah.
work with her,
Yeah.
and my response was, I just like stopped everything. It's like, what is this? I gotta go,
Mm.
because I've been really studying all of this, and this is my thing. And it's like, what is it? And so I she was in Barstow, where this is in the 90s. She was still being discovered, and she was living in her home in Barstow, and she was having an event at like the YMCA around the neighborhood, right, in the neighborhood. And she had like 100 of us, and we were all like laying on the floor, and she was doing her thing. And it was a weekend of just like a Katie love fest in this. And she had the famous people, like, I don't know if you know Cortana. She's a famous non-dual musician. She was playing there, and it kind of had a hippie feel to it back then.
Mm. Mm.
And my mind didn't know what to do with it, right? Because it just didn't know what to do with it, with what was I was experiencing there. But I saw the effectiveness of it, and I watched. And I also felt something in Katie that I'd never seen in anybody before. Whatever the space was, whatever this love was, it was different than just this kind of personal love. It had opened to something else. And so after the weekend, I just went up to her. It's like, hey, Katie, I'm Sid Friedman. I just love what you do, and this is what I'm doing, and I'm a mediator, and I'm wanting to be as effective as I can in helping people with this. I'd love to learn what you do. And she just does. Anyone who's been around her knows how she responds to these things. She's just like,
Mm.
"Oh, Sid, sweetheart, why don't you come and live with me? And
Oh,
and
wow.
you can be one of our mediators. Well, not one of our, one of our giving the work, because right then people are coming from around the world and just coming to her home." And
Yeah.
and so I was like, okay. And it's like, what can you say to that? But like,
Yeah.
yes, like
Yes.
when, like, like I'll be there tomorrow. And she had, Katie Katie's very unusual with how it opened for her, right? She was it's incredibly contracted before that.
Yeah.
And so much so that she was like fearful of her neighbors, and she bought the home. She bought the two homes next to hers, and she even created like this little compound. And so there were like 10 of us living there with her.
Wow.
And it was incredible. Lived there for 3 months.
3 months. Wow. Wow. So how long do you think she'd had her? Because wasn't it in the late 80s that she had her her complete falling away of mental torture, really? I mean, she was sleeping on the floor in a halfway house. Um, if people don't know her story, I'll link. I think there's quite a good interview with Oprah Winfrey about her story, so I'll link that in the notes. But was it? It was must have been quite early on after her
This
awakening.
this was late 90s. And she,
Oh,
you know,
it's late.
her integration, it went a long time, right? Like she
Mm,
would just walk the streets
yeah.
and she didn't have a context for what was happening,
Yes.
right? And so and then it just kind of, it very gradually opened up by people like me, like lots of
Yeah.
folks like you. It's like, who is this? So
Yeah. Well,
this
she
was
had to
before the
sort of.
internet.
She didn't know who her family was. I mean, she had a complete falling away. She was just like a baby in a way. She was just innocent. But she didn't even know a daughter had to walk around the supermarket and teach her the
Yeah.
names of things. And what I thought was really interesting, which is helpful, I think, for other people, that all of that had fallen away, but she still had the thoughts arising that had the potential to cause suffering. So she was sat in the desert, or she sat on her balcony, or like you say, she walked, and she just, watched. I mean, you'll probably know more than me, but she processed these thoughts like she does with the work. As they arose, she recognized that they weren't true.
She says that's where she discovered the work, right? Like she opened up to this absolute bliss, peace, and love. But then it's for her, she says it was like so much of it was about her mom, like it all, like the contraction,
Wow.
the fear, and it was like, and so she would do, you know her little song, um, judge your neighbor, write it down, ask for questions, and turn it around,
Oh, yeah.
Katie.
Yeah.
And so that's what she said she did. She had a little caravan in the desert, and she would go out there and just do the work.
Wow.
And so I love that. I love
Yeah.
the humanity of it, right? It's not
Yeah.
like it was some magic thing. Like something did
Yeah.
shift, but then she had to do the work. Like we all, like
It
you,
was
like
still
that great
dancing.
interview with you, right? Like you
Yeah.
described your whole process of doing your version of the work.
Mm, mm. So that I think that's really valuable. So a lot of people do recognize, the truth of there being this ever-present space of being, this just peace. And then thought will arise. And if they pick it up, they feel like they've done something wrong, and they've lost it quite easily. That more thoughts about losing it come in, and then they're off thinking that that was just an experience and they've lost it. Whereas it was so refreshing to hear that she'd, having had such a falling away of the personality, that it was still dancing, though the invitations, how the invitations, or the thoughts, these repetitive conditioned thoughts, were still appearing for her. So I think it just shows everybody, it doesn't matter. You've not only half seen it. It's just that these things do still dance. And I remember doing the work after recognizing the truth, still doing the work, but it just seems to get easier and easier. And I don't know whether you're supposed to do this, but I ended up, because I'd been doing it for years, I would do first question, last question, because it was just, I wouldn't recommend somebody doing that in the beginning, but it just became just also automatic.
Colette, you were cheating.
I'm
but
going to go
but
back and do it all again.
but Katie said she described it like that in her own system. At first, there was a doing of it. There was a doingness, and there was like, okay, we're gonna question. We're gonna ask the questions. Is it true? What do I get with all that
Mm,
belief? But then it became more like what you're describing. She even described like it even automatic. It even became
mm,
automatic in her system. Like a thought
yeah,
would come up, and something would just kind of would see that there would see through it.
yeah. Yeah, that's what's happened with me. That it just, I remember recognizing it happening by itself. I was thinking, oh, I was making coffee. A thought came up and there was no sense of being involved. It all just, and I was like, oh, self-inquiry is just happening by itself. Well, that's quite handy. As if it was just what was happening now. Just the process was happening by itself. So yeah, that's so interesting. So yeah, so you were 3 months living with her, which must have been. So did you think for you, for your journey, was that really helpful? I mean, obviously you've done all the mediation and what was the
It,
difference between the two?
oh gosh, I'm gonna cry. So much of the mediation was mind, right?
Yeah,
Especially the way I was trained for it in law school. And
yeah.
then I went and spent that year doing the nonviolent communication, which was about the heart. It was about love. It was about doing it from love. But then it was very much personal. It was like
Mm,
I am feeling compassion towards this person. What
mm,
Katie
mm.
opened up, right, is it's almost what the work is, where it moved in you, what you were describing. It's like when it just happens automatically, it's like we're no longer doing it. There's just like love is meeting the thoughts. Like a contract, like most of the thoughts,
Mm.
right? There's a sense of contraction, a want in the thoughts. And it's just in this sweet love, it's just being met by, you could say it's being met by being. I mean, that it's so very different in what Katie was doing. I couldn't make any sense of it, back this 20 something Sid couldn't do that. But
Mm.
uh and then I think this is really important. Um where one is coming from as a mediator, if one is coming from that place of, if you can touch the unity that Katie comes from, or
Yeah.
whatever, where you live, and where this system touches some of the time, much of the time, but it's,
Mm.
I think I'd like to, and this might be jumping ahead, but I think I'm wanting to add a piece here that when we think of the work or even the mediation, that's only half of what I find to be the gift of Katie.
Hmm.
This, because this is, I mean, what, like she, her work is kind of, it does what Advaita does. It's, it inquires, is it
Yeah,
true?
the
And it brings
self-inquiry.
us to self. It brings us to what she calls
Mm.
true nature,
Mm.
because we're not caught in our thoughts. So we get to come back to this beingness.
Mm.
But that's what she speaks about, because she tries to make it really simple. Like when
Yeah,
I lived with her, she wrote a book called Losing the Moon, where she spoke a lot more. But afterwards, she was like, no, we don't need that. We just want to
yeah.
keep it simple.
Simple.
Just the
Yeah.
simplicity of, is it true? And then true nature comes. But I really want to, and I'd love talking more about my time there and what
Mm.
I saw and what it
Hmm.
was like seeing Katie stay up all night with people and everything. But I just want to add
Mm.
this piece in here, because this is where some people see especially people who are, doing work with you and doing work with me, they see a recording of Katie and it's like, oh, I did that 10 years ago. That was just looking at my thoughts. That was just doing this inquiry with my thoughts. And
Mm.
I'm way beyond that. Um, that Katie, the other half of it is that Katie just saw love. She would, when someone would come up in front of her, tears would come from what she
Mm.
would
Mm.
see. She would see such beauty and innocence and love.
Yeah.
And she would look at her hand and just start to cry. It was this humanity, the beauty
Yeah.
that she saw, right?
Yeah.
And this is why she was my very first person where this opened up, and she
Mm.
continues to be maybe my favorite as far as
Mm.
what she represents, the
Mm.
love that she represents in it.
Yeah.
I just adore it. And I think it's like I tell my friends, when someone who doesn't know, okay, it's like, go check her out, but just see if you can listen beneath the work. Because
Mm.
when we hear people give satsang, they speak of that. They speak from that. Katie's chosen not to speak so much about what she really
Yes.
sees and the
Yes.
love that she is, because she doesn't want to make this complicated, and she also wants to make it accessible to absolutely everybody.
Mm. Some of her books, I was just listening just to refresh me, myself. Um, the one that she does with Stephen that's on the Heart Sutra. Have you, I can't remember the name of it. I'll pop it in the
Mm.
notes again. And that she goes into a story, but a little bit deeper and a little bit more of the unity and the love and which, I was fascinated by, because I was like, oh yeah, now I get to see the enlightened bit,
Right,
the
right,
enlightened
right.
story, and how it unfolds for her, and how she says it. It's really magical to hear
She
that.
did those two
That
books with
side.
Stephen, where Stephen will talk about the great wisdom traditions, and then she'll like, but then he'll be like, "Hey, Katie, where's that?
What do you
How do
think?
you and why do you make sense of that? What do you think about it?" And
Yeah,
then it's so beautiful, right?
yeah. And she does keep it simple and real and so relatable. And she just wants to help people, stop people from suffering, because she went through so much suffering.
Yeah, but it feels like such a celebration of life and our humanity, where there's
Mm.
it's like there's nothing neat. But also Katie would never come to someone and say, "Oh, you need to do the work," or "Let's do the work," right? All she sees is perfection. And she even
Yeah,
says, "This is a wonderful
yeah.
song I have to send you." They did a rap, a Katie rap, and she says, "If you're not seeing perfection, you're insane." And it's like, whoa, but
Yeah, that's radical.
it's radical, right?
Yeah,
But it's what she
she's
sees.
she
It's
does
love, right?
she does speak that, uh, just cuts through everything, doesn't she? Because she can speak to somebody who's really suffering, and literally moments later they're laughing, and they've got a real, it's a very heavy, you know, situation that they're in.
But I think this is an important part of it, Colette. And this is you and I have been so lucky with the people who have inspired us in this, where it's like when I see you working with people or I'm working with people, there's not a sense of there's anything wrong with them or anything that
Mm,
needs to
yeah.
change, right? Like
Mm,
always see is the beauty. We see the beauty of what they are. And then I think that's in Katie, it's so strong in Katie. Like I've
yeah.
never felt it so much as
Yeah.
I have around when you're around her, the sense of perfection and beauty and love that she feels towards everything. It's contagious, right? It's like, it's
Well, you're in the field with her, I would
you're
imagine,
in the
3 months, and
field,
seeing
right?
her daily.
And my mind was looking for it's like, okay, yeah, that's Katie on stage, but we know real life and we know when we wake up and we're grumpy and all that. I was
Mm,
I was looking like, I was trained as an attorney. There's a mind here. There's a critical mind that would look.
looking for an angle.
And it's like, well, there must be something going on here. But
Yeah.
no, I would watch her. People would come in suffering. She would stay up all night sitting with them. I mean,
Wow.
you hear the stories about it, and you see it in the books when she gave away her
Mm,
wedding ring, gave away her
yeah.
house. It's just, but
The
I
dog
lived
she
with her.
gave away.
The
Her
dog
family
gave away the
dog.
dog, right? But it's like, but it's just the most beautiful thing because it showed for me. I got to see what's possible in this human experience
Yeah.
and not I'm not and
Unconditionally.
there's not holding her up there at all,
No,
there's not
no.
holding her up there. It's more
She doesn't
like
hold
that's
herself up there.
she would just say,
Yeah.
"Oh, Sid, you got to look into that thought." But it's like she calls it
Yeah.
the true nature, this love that we are, this kindness that we are. And when it's not blocked by where she says, the only problem is we believe a thought. We believe
Mm,
our thoughts, right? Or, in spiritual terms, we identify with the thoughts. In my IFS work, we blend with the thought apart. And when you're not blended, when you're not identified, when you're not believing it, it's like, oh, here we are, we're back home. And
yeah.
and
The dust
it's so
settles,
fun.
and it's that ground where everything just drops. Ugh.
uh,
Ugh.
so she so Colette again, there was young Sid. He was on fire with just like this
New
being a mediator. He
discovery.
studied all of his life for this, and then Katie, but it so I was there for 3 months, but after I gotta tell you, after a week, something happened, and this just really it was like there was life before that, and then there was life after.
Mm.
Um, and what they call it, and I had no idea, but when I read about it later, it's what they call a samadhi happened
Ah.
with being there. And it was the craziest thing. It was like the background and foreground shifted in my system. Like the
Mm.
the foreground of all the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Hey, what am I doing next? What do I think? And then the background, this kind of peace and okayness, it shifted where there was
Mm.
just, and it lasted for a week. And
Mm.
I didn't have any know what to do with that. Luckily, I was there and there were people that knew about it.
Yeah.
But it was like, whoa, what's this?
So is it like an equanimity, just that everything's fine, everything's just
Yeah.
appearing?
Well, it's my experience of where you live now.
Mm,
It's Colette and it's Sid sometimes, right? And but for young Sid, it was that, right? It's like, whoa, there's absolute fulfillment here. There's no lack.
mm,
There's just this love and this sense of bliss and connection and just this love of everybody and this unity.
mm,
And there was no problem. And it really messed things up here. Not really, but kind of, because we had this idea, oh, I'm going to go get married. I'm going to go make this money. I'm going to
yeah,
go do all
yeah,
this stuff in the world.
yeah.
And then it's like, wait a minute,
Mm,
this is better than what I have gotten from successes. This is better. This is
mm,
richer. This that Katie just says is our nature is richer than I mean, I got a preview for a week of it, right?
mm,
Basically. Um,
mm,
and it was just like, yay.
mm. I'm just feeling into that, being able to, to be there and to see her work and see the magic of just allowing somebody to be who they are, how they're shaping in that moment, but then to just hold that space of being where she is, that unity, unified self, and then just inviting them to see that from being, because you can't join somebody in the story, in the dream, and try and fix them from the dream. But and that's really the work is done from being. Luckily I seem to work that out. And I know she talks about meditation, and I didn't really ever do very much meditation. So luckily I just did this dropping down into my body, which I think was the same was what she was pointing to anyway. I just found a way that worked. So I always recommend anybody, the work might not be for everybody. So it's whatever works for you, if somebody finds
Right.
meditation.
You've got like dozens, hundreds of traditions that do this. I mean, most of them include this in one way or another.
Yeah, the
And
self-inquiry.
but what I love about Katie, it's so accessible. It's so
Yeah.
ordinary. It's just there's no such thing as a spiritual person and a non-spiritual person in
Mm,
Katie land. It's just
mm,
we're just this beauty and thoughts and no thoughts are foreign to us. I love that. Um,
mhm.
I love the ordinariness of her work, which I think kind of you and I are doing our
Yeah,
best to embody too. It's just that
yeah.
it gets to welcome everybody right where they are. I loved it was like the full humanity in Katie's, right? She'd say, hey, if it's not a problem, don't do the work. If it's not a problem,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're not suffering, but like
Mm,
when it turns to suffering, she would
yeah.
say, then you just do the work. You do the work
Mm,
because the suffering is unnecessary. We don't need that.
mm.
And I mean, I mean, that's what I've been trying for, almost the balance in the full humanness and
Mm,
this joy of life that we are, and the true nature. And I keep
mm.
playing with that. I mean, I don't I don't come from a space as deep as where you abide, and so
Well,
it's
you
just
are
been a
there.
mix. It's that.
Can't get out of that
uh,
one. Nobody can get out of it. We're all in the same
but
one space. But I know what you
it's
mean.
like,
Yeah, the experience.
it just embraces all of, like, if we could really can
Yeah.
love, we can even love the contraction, love the suffering and not see a
Hmm.
problem with it. And
Yeah. Oh, definitely not.
that's,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, I never negate anybody's suffering because it is happening. The suffering is happening. The suffering is there. It's just who it's happening to is sort of where I point. But I don't negate it because I know I suffered. That's what feels like the wake up. The suffering is like the wake up call, really. This doesn't feel good. There must be a better way.
Isn't
And
that
like you
great,
were
right?
saying, that constant grasping, we get offered these carrots of, well, when we fix our life this particular way, we'll feel good. And eventually you realize, well, that doesn't ever happen. No matter how you fix it, how nice the picture looks, the dream looks. It's not actually what it's been sold as, because it's always the next thing, the next thing. But the, touching on what you were saying, that, the humanness of it is what we're here for as well. It's that constant dance, the constant dance, the shaping and patterning of form, emptiness and form. That's the beauty of it, really.
I play with it because it's, I play with the balance. I'm
Mm.
not sure what all that means, but
No, I think that's just how it flows. I think that is the emptiness and the form. That's we're experiencing form, and it's the same one thing, just shaping and patterning. I think that's the beauty of it. We don't negate, we don't push away, we don't separate ourselves away from the form.
right, Katie does not, there's nothing spiritual. She's like,
No,
oh, sweetheart,
no.
if you think like that's a great belief to look at, like you're
Yeah. Oh,
being
she's
spiritual.
hilarious. She's so funny with it as
Right?
well, isn't she? So funny with it.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, sweet. She's just, oh, Sid. Oh,
Yeah,
when she would see
we're
me caught in
both
the thought, oh, Sid.
I know. And then you just drop it because you can see that she's just loving what is. However, yeah, yeah, there's something that love, there is something that just makes you surrender
This,
the
I
fight.
don't know, I don't know if this plays in your system. Like she would always describe this as when someone would come up in front of her with a suffering, and they'd be like, oh, but Katie, I don't want, I'm having this. I'm a mess. I'm really having all these problems. I'm a mess and all these stuff. And Katie's like, oh, sweetheart, whatever's there, that's what's left in me.
Wow. Wow. So whatever's appearing is what's appearing in her. Yeah,
It's
beautiful.
just,
Yeah. I mean, I meet
it's
that all the time. That's all I ever see, is anything that's appearing, because that's what's appearing. It's whether you buff up, whether you push away from it or whether you just allow it. That's sort of the magic, really. Just allowing
yeah.
whatever is here, however it's shaping, that hey, and that it can just dance, and you don't need it to be any other way. That's where there's no separation. So, however anybody is appearing in your life, it's just it. And she always says it's not, I always use this one with the people that I speak to. The only business is your business, because it's just how we're reacting, how we're responding. That's because it's our reflection in a way, it's how we respond, not what somebody else is doing. Even if it is to move away, that's fine. I'm not saying that you have to be with something that's uncomfortable, but it's just, what is it presenting and how are you reacting to that?
Yes.
Is
But that's intense, Colette, when she brings it all back to
Yeah,
to my business. When she'll say,
yeah,
hey, it's either God's business,
yeah,
their business, or your
yeah, your
business. And it's
business.
like,
Yeah,
but really, isn't it just really, it's
yeah.
just like if you're suffering, what's the cause of it? Is it
Yeah,
God? Is
because
it
they're
that other
not
person?
making you
Right? It's right
suffer, are
here.
they? I think there's some
Mm-mm.
belief that other people are making us suffer when we're choosing to suffer.
But what freedom in that, and
Yeah,
also how
you've got the key
overwhelming
to your
that can be,
freedom. Yeah,
right? It's like
yeah.
that it's right here.
It's
That
reclaiming your power. Yeah,
that like, it's
your
just
authority.
these things really got. I would be with these for long periods of time. Like the only problem is that you're believing a thought.
Mm,
That's the only way you can ever have a problem in this
yeah,
Katie land. And there's a lot of responsibility like that. That's really heavy. It's a lot better to say it's the darn politicians. It's the hurricane.
yeah.
It's
Well,
the,
we feel like it is, but then it keeps dancing. So
and
actually, it is a lot better to turn it around, because then it's got chance to fall. It's got chance to be seen to drop.
you know what? That when you said the turnaround, I used to like dislike that more than anything. You remember the turnaround?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's great. That's when it lands. That's
Oh my
when you go,
gosh.
oh, oh, I see it now.
My girlfriend should listen to me. She should listen better. She should help me. She should care for me
Yeah.
more. It's like, yes, exactly, right, exactly. My life would be better if only she would do those things, and
Everybody
Katie
behave
would be like,
themselves.
right, it's Katie, but oh, sweetheart. Okay, you ready, Sid? Time to do the turnaround. My life would be better
Yeah.
if I cared for my girlfriend better, if I listened better, if I was more attentive.
Mm,
My life would be better if I cared more for me, if I listened to me
mm.
better. No, but what about her? It's horrible. It's
Oh,
so painful.
yeah. And sometimes you can do that turn, you can keep going with that turnaround, keep turning, and you find more and more juiciness. And you're like, oh, oh.
Oh,
It is quite exposing, but also freeing.
freeing, right? Because then as it as it drops or as we're not identified with it, then if we're not identified with our thoughts, what do we have? And this is where
Mm.
Katie doesn't talk about this, right? This is what
Yeah.
you
But you're
speak about and our
meeting
other
it from the
satsang
space.
friends speak about, right?
Yeah.
What's left is just
Yeah. It's
is the
just this.
beauty, this
Yeah.
radiant presence of this
It's just
beauty of
meeting it. Yeah.
this Colette I'm looking at, this Sid, this everything.
Mm. Mm. And that another the great question where she asks, how would you think and feel without this thought? I don't know if she asked it that way, but that's how I've learned to ask it. And it just gives you an opportunity to see that how it would feel, how you would actually behave without that thought, how it would feel. And so it's like a boom, it's like a window on how your life could be if you didn't think that thought.
Yes.
Oh, and the
I,
relief. And I always say to people, how do you feel? And
mhm.
99% of the time they say free. And said, okay,
Oh,
that's the
really? You're free.
potential. Yeah.
Yes. And
How
then do you
does
want,
that
okay,
feel?
do you want to go back to believing the thought? And what's it like when you believe that thought? Or what's it like when you don't
That's
believe
your
that thought? Oh,
potential.
free or
Yeah. Freedom.
contracted, miserable,
Yeah.
free.
Yeah. So it's just that little window, that little opportunity to that it's worth looking because this is what you get, the freedom. This is
But
your
isn't it all?
potential.
Yes, but it's so, again, it's there's nothing spiritual there. It's just,
No, it's
well,
so
you're believing the
easy.
thought. Look what happens.
Yeah. So simple. So simple. And all the best things are, we just overcomplicate them.
Oh.
The various practices and all these different things. And
Claire, I want to say something. I'm like loving this conversation because if the people who watch if people watch this, it's like an appreciation. It's like for me, it's a celebration of the gift that Katie has given me and given
and
us
me.
and
Yeah.
has just offered. And I because I can't, if that had not, and that happened by accident, right? If that had not happened, I might be this attorney, mediator, nonviolent communication guy, and
Mm,
it would just be
yeah.
it would be that other believing the thoughts guy, and it's just the gift
Yeah. It
of
would have been
Katie
hard
and
work.
hard work,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you miss that spontaneous joy when something's seen from the truth. That when somebody else sees the truth, you get the same feeling. You're with them in it. That release is so nice to be with somebody when they recognize the truth.
Right, which is I love the videos that you put up of working with people and the ahas that happen
Mm, mm. I
because
think the
it's like
first, sorry, I think the first video I ever put was about doing the work because I knew that is what
mm,
helped me. So it was my first ever video. I thought, how do I show people that you don't have to suffer? And I was like, look, I just did this, four things. So I think it's still my first video. I'm not sure I have to check, but
because
yeah.
there's something about again, like yeah, I'm living with Katie out there. And it's like still the mind couldn't get it, but it was like eventually it started to see this, started to see what you
Mm,
share in your videos, and but there's something about having a taste of that, like when you're describing working with people and they get a taste of that freedom when they drop their thoughts or just they're hanging out with you or they're hanging out with Mooji or whomever resident, however they find, they're hanging out with their cat, right? They find in the cat or they're hanging out at the ocean in my background or wherever they're hanging and they see
mm,
nature and
mm.
they get a glimpse of
Yeah,
this. But I
recognition.
think what's important, all of us have these glimpses that keep happening, right? We fall in love, we have
Mm,
this awe, we have all of these things that happen, but there's something about giving it its weight. Like, whoa, there it is. You're glimpsing this and supporting like that. And then do you see how when you believe the thoughts, you leave it, and like you come back
Mm.
to it. It's like I think that's the gift of your work. That's the gift of Katie, and that's the gift of just helping people recognize what's already here.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that experience of the coming and going. So you feel like you've lost it. But if somebody's now keep pointing you back to, well, no, it's here. Look, it's still here. It's still here. It's still here. It feels like I felt like I was leaving and coming back. But becomes a point where you recognize you never leave. This is just the dancing. This is just the attention is coming and going. But you never leave what you are.
But to see that, that's a big deal, right? To be able to see, in my work, I call it a tipping point, to see that, wow,
Ah.
it's actually always here. It doesn't go.
Mm.
Something, whatever it is, we call it awareness, presence, love.
So is your work something that was born out of what you trained and then meeting Katie and then working with people? Yeah.
Yes. It was, well, first off, it was like with what opened with Katie, right? That what I'm
Mm.
calling a samadhi that opened, then it closed back again. And it was like,
Mm.
that's what I want. This that we're describing of, right? Because then it was a sense of it's gone. Where'd it go? Well, that is
Yeah.
better than like $1 billion. It's
Yeah.
better than, any of it. It's better. It's better.
Yeah.
And it's
Because
like, and you're
it's,
like nodding, you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
I know what you mean.
um, and so then I became a seeker. I wasn't a seeker, but I became a seeker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kept getting glimpses of it, right? Like I would go, you could name a non-dual person that visits the US, or I traveled the world to it. I would work for 6 months as a mediator, then
Mm.
I'd go and be with these people and I did that for like 20 years. So it was really slow,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Because it opened for a month, it opened for 3 months, but then it would disappear again. It's like, what's going on here? Why is that
Mm.
happening? And and that's so that was my own personal thing. And then my work kind of kept evolving out of it, right? And then
Mm.
finally, I think I told you about this. I went and trained in something called internal family systems, and
Mm-hmm.
it for me it does what Katie does. Katie calls them thoughts, and we just call them parts. Any of the thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
feeling, just but it's the same thing when Katie would say, judge your neighbor, write it down. Whatever that thought is, write it down. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason we write it down right in the work is you get some distance from it. It becomes an object,
Yes.
becomes a
Yeah.
thought instead of, well,
Yeah.
this is me, I'm suffering,
Yeah.
I'm sad. And no, 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 it's just a
Yeah.
thought. See the thought.
Yeah.
And so I have a little different version of it, which is what I call my work, which I call it Effortless, IFS. And it's instead of a thought, we call it a part. And it's just the same thing. It's being able to be aware of it.
Mm.
And then once you're aware of it, where you're aware from, which we call,
Yes.
being a self,
That's what I was
is
just about
this,
to ask
right?
you. I was like, hang on a minute. This, once you're apart, yeah, it's like you've untangled the weeds of the identification with it. So you can just see it for what it is. You've got, like I point to, this bigger picture. You've got the larger view, the broader view.
Yes.
So it feels like
Yeah.
you're not in it. You can start to see it.
But it's a big deal, right? Because somehow we've normalized like the idea of like, yes, Katie, and she'll say, I have said I haven't felt stress in 25 years, right? And you're like,
Mm.
what do normal people, what do we make of that? When someone says, I haven't
Mm.
felt any stress or anxiety in 25 years,
Mm.
right? But it's like it's become so normal, the idea that there's anxiousness, there's stress, that it's here. And but Katie in the work, right? You find it as a thought. And so you get some distance from it. You can track what it's causing, what is having us blend or identify with it. And that's been the game in my system. It still is. The system still blends and identifies with these things. But it's like to notice, if we notice the part or notice any sense of a I should, or my life would be better if this would happen, they can be really sneaky. These beliefs,
Mm.
especially culturally, we can't even, they're not ours. They just came from the culture. It's like, oh,
Mm.
men should be this way, or, whatever. And it's like,
Mm. 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 Yeah.
and like, if there's absolutely any stress in our system, if there's anything other than peace, love, okayness, flow, connectedness, right? Then
Mm.
it tells us that there's, in Katie, there's a belief there. And if there's not, or in my language, there's a part, there's something that we're blending with, that we're identifying with. And then so it's such a fun game to be able to just notice what
Mm.
that is. And like once we notice it, it's like, oh,
Mm. Mm. And there's also that point though, that this looking out, this projecting out, at some point, I don't know whether Katie teaches this, but this sort of turning around for me, this looking more at the truth of my being instead of the dancing, the ever changing, to turn this way, for me, I think was the, if you want to talk about a journey, was the stabilization, to keep marinating in being rather than this projecting out. So at some point, this marinating becomes that you turn and you're in the awareness. You know, that this backwards and forwards thing, this turning somehow, I think Eckhart calls it presence power. It's almost like it builds because you're not limiting it. You're not being faithful to this. So there's a fine line, isn't there, between looking at the things that are dancing,
Yeah.
remaining in being and looking at how they're dancing, and also to be interested in this never changing so that it has chance to blossom, really.
This is I think really interesting what you're describing, and I think it's a stage in the opening that you're describing. Katie will speak of this too in her own way.
Okay. Yeah.
But I want to say, let me just, I should have said this at the very beginning. I want to say this because when like, this is like a point in time that you and I are talking. And just since hopefully this will, like, lots of people will see this because I'm hoping they will, because it's a celebration of this person I have such a care for,
We both
Katie,
do,
and my new
yeah.
friend Colette. And it's just, but I also want to say that this is 2024 and things are changing here quickly. 6 months from now, if you talk to me, it would probably be a different conversation, not about Katie, but where I'm speaking from. So I just wanted to add that in here because you're speaking of something here, the shift from the idea of thoughts as objects, right? Or seeing the thoughts or the problems as objects or the parts, to what opens it. And in my work, we call it the third view. And it's a sense of when everything just becomes an expression of this, where the thoughts become an expression of this. And there's no longer the sense of a problem. It's all this.
That's a lovely pointing, actually. And that's where, that's what Katie was saying when she said that's what's left in me, isn't it?
Yeah. And Katie, you know, she does it in her books, but she doesn't speak very much of that, right? Because it's
she doesn't want to complicate her message, I think.
It doesn't want to
and I think
it?
her what she's doing anyway leads to this. If you're not doing it from your head, and that's one thing to point out. A few people I've come across that have said, "Oh yeah, I just didn't get that," and I've pointed them to, well, did you go to being? Were you able to drop down and open your focus and be with, to get the answer, for the answer to land? For me, it always felt like it landed and then dissipated, and they were doing it all in their minds, which is understandable if you haven't got that little bit of how it's taught. So, and I think potentially in the videos, it probably might not be shown as much, because I think when you're in the presence of Katie, you drop into unity, I would have thought. I mean, I haven't been, apart from on a big stage, I did see her live, but.
I think that's how some people miss it. They miss the gift of Katie because they'll just be, oh, we're just asking the question. Is it true? What happens when you believe this thought? What happens if you drop it, turn it around? But it's just what you said. The key is where the question's coming from, where the inquiry,
because you
where
do
this
have
curiosity.
You have to start with that annoyed mind, the one that's chewing on the question. You've got to start there, that it's to really, really shake the pan, really get everything up, get really gritty with it, and be that sort of whiny, complaining, it's not fair voice, really get that out and get it on paper, and then drop down to the okay. So I described the second, so we might just go through in case somebody hasn't done the work, we could go through it. I'll do it how I did it, and you can
let me give a belief. Let me believe. Colette, I should lose weight.
Oh, I just wanted to tell how I was going to do it. I wasn't going to do it with you.
Okay, never mind.
I'll just point to how I did it, and you can see, please jump in any time. So how I did it was, the first question was like the whiny, the thing that just keeps going round and round and round and you're chewing on constantly. And then I used to go to the second, is it absolutely true? And this would be, I'd drop to about here and there'd be more of an open focus.
Mm.
And I would sort of describe it, oh, let's have another look at that. Let's just see. And I describe it as a detective coming in, seeing a crime scene. And he doesn't just stop at the door and say, yeah, yeah, it's a murder. He goes, well, let me just have a little look. And he walks around the body and he looks from all angles. Let's just see exactly what's happening. So the second one, is it absolutely true? That's how I sort of visualize it, as somebody having a proper, let's have a proper look at this. And then the dropping down into sort of the chest area. How would you think and feel without that thought? Oh, it's just a relief. It's just freedom. You know what? Then freedom is normally what comes up. And then that dropping down, down, down. And then the turnaround. So the turnaround can be the tricky one for people, and they can just need a little bit of help. And I did notice Katie say in her book that could I offer you? She does something like that. I mean, you've been around her a lot more than me, but you know, could I just would it be okay if suggestion? You know, if somebody's finding it quite hard to turn it around, I thought that's so sweet. She doesn't say this. Let me tell. You know, she just asks them if they'd like a little bit of help finding, because the turnaround can, like I said earlier, you can do it a few times, then all of a sudden it's like, oh. And for me, it's like a, oh, it's like I found something that was hidden and I can't quite believe what I was believing. It's a bit of a shock sometimes that it was so hidden, the belief. So, so yeah, that was just my explanation of how I did it. But I mean, may have you may have gone on to do it differently for you as
Oh, I
well,
think that's so lovely. I love I love like the little detective looking around, the little detective and the coming down into the heart. It is just so dear Colette. And just that's the encouragement of it is to make it your own, right? Really go
Mm,
deeply in
yeah.
it. And like Katie
Yeah.
would be like, hey, you could spend a whole day with one inquiry, like really being
Wow.
with it. But often, often they go like, then they start going faster. But I love that we give her credit for how that has helped us. And again, it's not
Mm,
just for me so much. Half of it is what she embodies in her
mm,
being in the way, because
yeah.
it wouldn't. I'm sure lots of people have models like this, but there's something special about where she comes from. And
Mm.
I'd like to offer this as far as, and I would go back every year and spend time with her and do these long retreats. She
Oh,
does
did
these
you
this
do the
thing called,
10-day thing? I always thought
oh,
about doing that.
yeah. And she does them 5 days now. She's changed it to 5 days, but she calls the
Oh,
school
does
for the
she?
work. And we kind of helped design that when I was living with her. That
Oh,
was part coming
wow.
out of when I was there. And but then she also does this thing called No Body, which is interesting. It's a weekend, and it's her version of the non-dual, like to really
Oh, yes, I saw that on her
and
website,
so
but because I just had a quick look, but if that's for people who've already done the 5 days with her, I think. Yeah,
ideally,
yeah.
yeah, that they've really dived in. And
Mm,
but I also want to share this that you notice with people who are around her, and it's really sweet, where it's
mm,
the relation that we have to our thoughts, right? Often we start with these thoughts, God, this one that's critic says, I'm doing it wrong, I should do it differently. I've gained 10 pounds, whatever. It's like all of that. And then, but see what seems to happen, it's so beautiful when you're around the community, what seems to shift, and you know this well, it's like the our relationship with the thoughts change. It's like we end up, it turns to a place of like, sounds crazy, but like loving our thoughts. It's like,
mm,
oh, sweet. It's like the way Katie says, oh, sweetheart. There's this,
mm.
it even comes in our system. Like there's a love of, oh, there's that
The
little critic going
innocence.
on about me. Right. The innocence, you can see the innocence
Yeah,
of it. And it's the idea that everything's trying to serve us. Every single thing is trying to serve
yeah,
us and doing its best for our best interest. And then it becomes, it's really sweet what I see happen in systems with this. It becomes a love affair with us, with what's arising. And so
mm,
it becomes less of this is a problem. Oh, I need to do the work on this
yes,
part.
yeah,
Then it's like, oh, I get to welcome that part and just
yeah,
love it. And
yeah. It's a positive if anything comes up. So that's how it became for me. I was like, oh, what's this? Is there anything else left? Not in the invested, this is all me, this is awful, I've got all this stuff. More in a, what else is there? Oh, great. Oh, something else, something else. It was sort of like a game, and there was a lightness to it. Like you say, that you sort of welcome what's appearing. And it's just a chance just to clean the lens a little bit more. I mean, we are cleaning this ego that doesn't exist. I thought I might just point that out. We are cleaning, these thoughts, this mind-made, these conditioned thoughts. There is a point where we have to realize that we're not that. That isn't who we are, that these thoughts are not coming from us. And that is a tricky thing to untangle identification from, that they're not our thoughts. But, and I don't think I got that through doing her work. That was sort of afterwards, that recognition that that the thoughts are neutral, that they're appearing just like sounds and sensations in this space of being, that they're all effortlessly appearing. But if we're identified, we feel like we're thinking them. So it's completely understandable why we get sort of pulled in if we're identified with them, but just recognizing that they're effortlessly appearing and they're actually neutral until we identify.
And that's quite a leap where you're speaking from in this, with the relationship, with the understanding of the parts. And I think for people who are watching it, like, listen to that again, what Colette just said. I mean, because it's really beautiful where your system is with that. And the question, and I've watched people go there, and there's and I think they can get there through the work, with the sense of the falling in love with it. It just gradually happens, like seeing the innocence. First, it might be the innocence of the parts, or the beauty, or seeing just the love that shows up for these thoughts, for what they're, and as we start to have that love for it, then I think something loosens, and it becomes more what you're pointing to, this dance of Leela, this joy of life. Everything is
however it's
enjoyed.
shaping, it's okay. Yeah. So you spent 3 months. So at the end of the 3 months, so was that a cutoff point that you decided you were just going to do 3 months with her, or just came to a natural end?
I was really young. Sid wasn't so smart, Colette. He made some really bad choices. Okay, really bad choices. And it was that because Katie, it was all about doing the work. And so I became really enamored with the space that opens when we're not believing our thoughts, right? Because I got a real taste of it, and it would kind of come and go during those 3 months. And then I had lots of people that would come from other traditions to visit Barstow and stay with us. And there were some people, as we know, like, you speak this way, and others, they just speak about the nature of what this is, the bliss, the love that this is. And I became so curious about that. I was the mail. We had all jobs in the place, and mine was to go get the mail for Katie, right? I'd go pick it up and bring it and show her what we had and go through it. And there was a Unity Church bulletin, and it had Gangaji on the cover of it. And she was speaking about this. And I became really enamored. She wasn't speaking about what it blocks it. She was speaking of the nature of this. And I was like, wow, I got to go check that out. So so that's when I left Barstow. So I'm going to go. I went go on a retreat with Gangaji. I got to go check that out. And then I went back to work and everything. But it was an idea that, there was confusion there, because again, Katie has been my light through a lot of this, of what's possible. But there was that thinking that, because again, she doesn't speak from that place. She speaks more of, hey, are you suffering? Just inquire, and everything will be great. And there was something like, hey, I want to do something super spiritual. I want to go be with these other people, the Papaji lineage, and all the Ramana Maharshi, and these Zen Buddhist things, and that was stupid. But so, but then I go back every year.
Perfect. Because you can speak of all of that. You can help people not go down spiritual cul-de-sacs, and who knows that, it was probably perfect. Absolutely perfect. I look back on everything I did, and I just feel like it was perfect. However, because I can't find it, to be honest. I'm thinking, what did I do? Where is it? Can't actually find it. But I can try and remember it all. That chasing of, that forward movement, that momentum to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. We can go down rabbit holes, and they can become a spiritual cul-de-sac. You can get lost and then put your head up and go, what on earth was I doing?
Yes. exactly. I want to see, you mentioned something about the turning it back in. And I
Hmm.
just want to add this to it because there's some folks might be like, oh, gosh, you're so self-indulgent. You're just being about, oh, the inner peace, and you're just
Hmm.
doing that
Hmm.
inner peace.
Hmm.
But I, to me, it's not that, it is that, but it's so much more. That again, I worked as a mediator, and my job was I wanted to be able to just see the beauty and perfection in everybody I work with, right? Because that,
Hmm.
and I want to say the cool thing, the way Katie makes this about it's just your business, Sid. It's no, it's
Hmm.
not God, it's about God, it's not about other, it's your business.
Yeah.
It's the only problem is your belief. That's the only thing that's keeping you from seeing the beauty of life. And she would say,
Mm.
like, she has some quote about like it's so sad, like we're on heaven on earth and we put ourselves in hell and not
Yeah.
see the heaven that's here, right? Because that's what she does see
Mm.
is that, and you and I get glimpses of that, or maybe you
Mm.
live in that now where it is that. But I just want to see that it directly translates, because the only thing that keeps us from just being in love with everyone and just loving what is, she says loving what is, right? It's her big thing,
Mm.
is believing a thought or being blended with a part or being identified. And that's all an inside job. That's why she brings us back to it's your business. Be with your
Mm.
business.
Mm. Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
That you think that a mind would say that it was self-indulgent, or, you know.
Someone can say that you're just going into the cave and
Mm.
meditating, or just going into the cave, and you're not being about the world. Hey, look what's happening in Israel. Look what's happening in Ukraine.
Mm.
Look what's
Mm.
happening with the hurricane that just happened in the States, and the poverty and
Yeah.
people living on the streets. And you're
Yeah.
just being, hey, let's just go home and find peace
Oh,
here.
yeah. Yeah. Um, but we can't, yeah, it's that whole sort of guilt, isn't it? And that we can't, that we have to join people in their um, you know, sadness or suffering. But that doesn't help somebody. It's if you're okay, then you can help somebody else. But if you're suffering with them,
Yeah.
you're weakening, and I think of it as a bigger thing. If we're adding more love or more hate, if we're hating the haters, we're adding more hate. So if we can add more love, if we can love the haters, the people that are hating other people, let's not join them in
Yes.
hate. Let's just hold them in the space of love, that they're seeing themselves as so separate. So if we see them as separate, then we're joining them in separation. If we can see that they're just having thoughts of separation, they're innocent, they're having thoughts of separation, which is causing them to be in fear and intelligence. So it's survival mode, attack. So if they're lashing out, and we've all done it, we've all reacted to somebody projecting fear onto what they're saying. And then there is a moment you realize, oh, they weren't meaning that. You've already attacked them.
Yes.
And you sort of think, oh gosh, I was really attacking somebody, and all they were doing was handing me something, and you were taking it as whatever it was, whatever the projection was. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on that's very,
Yes.
the conditioning, talking to conditioning, and people not really recognizing what they're saying to each other. So I think, if the only business is to be at peace, you add more peace in the world.
And Katie say, like, as we think about, well, who do we dislike the most? I can't even use the word hate, but who do we
Mm.
find to be the most difficult people to like or enjoy on the planet, right? And if we were seeing any, like, again, if we're seeing anything other than beauty and perfection in them, just the way they are,
Mm. Mm.
Katie would just say that's just innocent confusion, Sid.
Yeah.
Innocent confusion. And she can
Yeah.
love it and welcome it. It's just
Mm.
confusion, because what we know is the nature of this is, we can't look at anybody and not see this is beauty and innocence there. What they're
Mm.
this being is what Katie calls true nature, is what
Mm.
they all are. Even the totalitarian leaders that are
Yeah.
maybe doing some really horrible things to people.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
something
that
the mind won't
Mhm.
understand, because I've experienced that unconditional love. I'm not saying I live in that she's living all the time, but it takes you by surprise when you just fall in love with somebody unconditionally. And it does happen to me quite a lot.
Oh,
And you
it
can't
doesn't
quite
feel
believe it.
like I've never felt so connected, in this humanity to, as I see the news on
Mm,
the station. It's like you can see this is where it gets tricky, right? To see both the beauty of what is and also the compassion and this suffering and this being wanting to be available to help and serve and support the people.
mm,
It's just
mm,
it's so personal. It's so personal. I love that word,
mm.
Katie. It's so personal here when someone's suffering. It's not so much the them anymore. There's a personal and the connectedness. And I love
Mm,
how that opens up, and I really look forward to it opening up more. And
mm,
that's one of the reasons, again, I hold Katie up as one of my real examples of what can open
mm.
up in our humanity as far as the depth of
Yeah,
that love and connectedness that's there, where again she looks at her hand, she just hears, and anyone who comes up in front of her, even someone's yelling
yeah.
at her, there would
So
just be compassion and love and maybe even tears that of love
yeah,
there. Isn't that
I
rich?
do
Isn't it cool
remember.
that that's part of this? That's part of our humanity, that it can open up to that. I just
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, 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 you didn't. I was just remembering a moment where I had a different way of responding to somebody who was suffering. Normally, I'd want to go and help them. It's a natural thing that you want to cheer them up, or you want to give them positives about their situation, and you want to placate them. And at one point for me, it just all dropped away, and I remember just watching this person just be a complete mess, and me just being there with them. And I was there was an awareness that this was very different way of being with somebody. The fixer Colette who wants everybody to be okay, who wants to rush in and pat them on the back and hold their hand and give them all lots of positive things that they're perhaps not saying. That all I just sat there, and I was aware that something had changed, and it was compassion instead of that. Can't remember what used to play out, but there was just this compassion for somebody, and it just they could have been shaping any way, a real hot mess, and it was fine. It was like I didn't need them to be any other way, and that's what was very different. Whereas before, I wanted to fix them so they weren't, and it's about ourselves. We want them to feel good so we feel good. We don't want to be faced with that mess because it doesn't feel good. And I just sat there, and they could have been crazy. It was fine. I was just complete, but I knew there was something very different. And I was just, and then at the end, I just said something really nice, and it was all fun. And they're like, "Oh, thank you so much." And I thought, I didn't do anything. It was the most effortless being with somebody ever. It seemed to be a lot more therapeutic for them than saying, or trying to shut down or dampen the mess. Just allow them to be a mess.
And what for me is what's so lovely is what's how they are experienced differently. If I'm not kind of blended with some thought of, oh, we can help them or something would be better if their life changed. Just enjoying them just the way they are.
Well, you're not making them wrong then. You're not making
Mhm.
them that they've got a problem that we've got to fix. It's absolutely fine however they're shaping. And they can be allowed to rant or cry or be all snotty. It's okay. It's absolutely okay. And maybe then they've got chance for it to work its way out, rather than, I think, quite often we sort of keep suppressing things. We keep putting a lid on it because we've been taught you can't be a hot mess. You've got to keep it together. You've got to,
I think that's what I felt around Katie. A lot of people felt around Katie. Just what you're describing. The things that, oh, can't show that, can't let that be seen, or that's a hot
mm,
mess. The very nature of what you're describing, how you were with that person, that's what people experience around Katie as well. There's just this adoration of them, just the way they are.
yeah, yeah. And also it's effortless on the person that's being with them. It's completely effortless because your emotions aren't all jangled in with their emotions. You're not both crying in a mess. You're just loving them as they are. It's just the love again, I think, just the acceptance. I mean, it all comes down to allowing, recognizing the truth of the situation, that It's just what's unfolding. If we resist it, it's painful. If we allow it to unfold, it's beautiful. However it's shaping. Just acceptance. Accepting the moment. Allowing life to unfold without resistance.
That's that's one of her titles of one of her books. The acceptance is just like loving what is, right?
Mm,
It's just, but what you're describing, it seems so, as you describe it, it seems so, of course, I just accept what is. And there's just a meeting it and appreciating
mm,
because it's so much
mm,
easier. So, but again, like to really live that, it's just, it's
mm,
not so easy for
mm,
most of us,
mm,
right? To really
mm,
celebrate what is. And
mm. But we're almost like tuning forks. I don't know, they mentioned it in the other um talk, but that any rub, any friction is the wake up. It doesn't have to get that we're being jangled by resistance to something. It starts with a little rub, a little friction, a little resistance on the moment. And we start to catch that, we can just nip it in the bud before we dive into before we get on that roller coaster ride.
that, that seems to be part of the art of it, right? Some of the art of it, to be able to, as we know, like how loud does it need to be, that little
Yeah.
friction before it's noticed? And when it's noticed, does it just arrive as it did in your system? And it seems to do here, the sense of just welcoming it and maybe a little inquiry or seeing through
Mm.
it. Or does it need to become bigger? And it's like, well, when it becomes a problem, it's
Yeah,
like, oh,
how much do you want? That's what I used to get a sense of. How big do you want this? How much of a wake-up call do you want? And then there's no blame on the person that that's happening to. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wouldn't want anybody to pick that up. It's never, it's just literally is how it's shaping.
and we saw that shortcut happen in some people with Katie. This was what amazing. Some people who'd be like, oh, I'm a mess. I've got this. Oh gosh, my life, a relationship, lost my car, whatever. And then like in their system, inside them, they would be seeing lots of problems, right? Lots of problems here, lots of difficulties.
Mm,
But then they'd hang out for a weekend with us in Barstow or something. And then there would be a sense of being welcomed and the okayness and like being something about being seen as there's no problem here. Being seen that way, like you were saying, the tuning fork, something can kind of pick up on that. And I watched that happen with people. And I know you have that happen with people who work with
mm,
you. That happens, the possibility of, oh, maybe this really isn't a problem. Maybe there's a lightness
mm.
to these contractions.
I think it's lovely when somebody gets that distance that they go, oh, oh, I saw it. I saw it come up rather than it be smack in your face. Oh, 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 and that recognition that you don't have to pick it up. That it, oh, so it's just oh, it's, that enough distance to be seeing that there is a choice. I remember that very moment that I realized there was a choice, that I could pick up the thought or not. And the absolute difference in not picking up the thought,
Mm,
the and how simple it was, but only once you'd not picked it up. Because it's we're in such a pattern behavior, so faithful to what we've experienced, so sort of almost grounded in this repetitive behavior. And to just break that. And you can't believe how easy it is when you do it. The freedom in not picking up that thought, in not having that conversation, that to and fro with somebody. It's like it was that easy. That tip, oh, it's probably what you call a tipping point. That point where you can just say, just not engage. And it's like the whole world opens up of freedom, that it was that easy. But somehow, I don't know whether you've got any insights on that pull, that gravitational pull to what I guess it's identification, or I feel into it now, that mm, that almost morphing of this becomes this. I don't know whether you can feel into that, what I'm
yeah, I
trying to
love
say.
that. I love it. I love it with your investigation, the way you were describing the work, because like Katie might really spend time focusing on like what's it like when you believe the thought, when you do leave here and you do identify,
Mm,
what happens? How do you treat yourself? How do you see the
mm,
world? How do you treat others what's it like with your partner? Is there stress? How do you, what's life like from
Mm,
that place?
that's
And
interesting.
then, right, to really feel it. And what's it
Yeah.
like in your body? What are the sensations when you breathe it? Just
Ah,
that
so you
little
could
movement
rehearse
you're
that.
describing, right? That little
So you could
move.
rehearse that very thing I'm talking about. So you could
Yes,
bring up a
yes,
scenario, rehearse it, feel that pull, but also be able to just see how it would feel if you didn't.
right, which
A
is where you
bit like
took us
where
when you
she
go in,
says, yes. Oh, I'm going to try that.
right? And then something again, the tipping point, something learns, right? Something
Yeah.
learns. Well, I can
Yeah.
pick
There's
up that
another
thought,
way. There's
right?
another way. There's another way. There's another way. Ah, thank goodness there's another way. We don't have to pick it up. Hallelujah. Oh, brilliant. So have you got anything else you want to share before we finish our little
Mm,
recorded bit? We can chat afterwards, but is there anything else of
yeah.
your time with Katie or how you think it's helped the work that you do with people?
Mm. I just want to, I
Or
guess I
just,
say that from all my time with her, I just want to, like, she's so accessible to check. If anybody who Colette and are talking about here, it's like Oprah adores her. There's all these recordings with Oprah, and
mm,
she also does free stuff every week. She does these
yeah,
free meetings every
yeah,
like three
that's good
days a
to
week or
mention.
something, and then she still has these.
Yeah.
She's getting older. Katie's maybe 80, something like that now, and but she's
81, I think
and
it said. Yeah.
81, right? But she doesn't. She still walks
It's
faster than I
amazing.
can walk. I mean, she's just
Yeah.
it's crazy. But she's still given to, but I want to do that. I want to do a little plug for it's thework.org. And what she loves saying is that everything she offers is free on the work,
Hmm.
on that
Yeah.
work.org. The whole everything we're talking about, the worksheet,
Yeah.
and she has this thing called a
I didn't
little
have to pay
book
for anything. I
that I
found
think
accessed it all.
they send you for free. And
Yeah.
then she also, I think they still have this. It might even be a work line, like a hotline where you can call in and they'll facilitate you because Katie's
Mm,
stuck in this out there. But then there's Katie, and then there's you and me, right? Who have had the gift of it. And I just want to also, do a plug for both of us, plug for my
mm.
friend Colette. And because I think there's really something about, yeah, about there's like we watch a lot of it on YouTube, but there's something about being in a dialogue and an
The
interaction and being
resonance.
met like
Yeah.
this, the
Somebody be
resonance. And
able to
so,
bring you back, bring you back, bring you back.
and
Yeah.
I love how you do that, Colette. And I just
Mm,
want to say, like Colette, you just go to her YouTubes and you can schedule and to do that. And I want to do it. And for me, this has all
mm,
come together in what I call
brilliant.
effortless IFS. And
Mm,
you'll find a lot of Katie in this in what I'm doing. But effortlessifs.com is my website, and
mm.
I do free groups maybe 3 times a week. And
Wow,
so
brilliant.
just come, and if you want a taste of it, come play. And I've got and
That's great.
the website's a little dated, like the YouTube. You go to you just if you Google Sid IFS shorts, you'll get these like 1 minute videos introducing
Hmm.
all this, and that's
And I'll
fun.
put
So
lots
I
of
just wanted
links
to
in
do
the
that.
notes. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
that's
it's
great.
just the fun of all
Um,
of this.
Also, I found with Katie, I used to go to her YouTube because it's vast, the amount of videos she's got on YouTube, and you can just search a particular topic, like your mother or your mother-in-law, or which I found really good. That you search a topic and it'll come up. So you can go onto YouTube, put Byron Katie, and then put trouble with, or, and you'll get a video of her walking somebody through it. There's so many on there, and
Yes.
I found that really valuable. So I could go straight to my problem and see a real life, scenario of it. And she doesn't hold back. Some of the people are really in a sticky. It's not, she does it on everything. She doesn't hold back on, you know.
And I'd like to add when people do that, because I want to really
Mm,
recommend what you just described, Colette. So you've got hundreds, maybe thousands of videos out there,
mm,
but don't do it from a sense of understanding when you watch
mm,
it. See if you
yeah,
can be in the work with her as she's asking somebody. So you'd be better off if you were with your ideal partner. You'd be better off if you lost weight. You'd be better off if your friend hadn't died. You'd be better off if so and so was president of your country. It's like whatever she's asking, stay with it and make it your own. And then you can, that's the gift of it.
yeah.
It's all an internal thing.
You can always stop the video and just feel into it, can't you? Till you're there, you've got to that point, and then start the video again. So just really take it at your own pace and let you be your own guide, really.
I just want to say I feel a little vulnerable having said all of those things, like having, because the idea is to do the work to get unblended, unidentified from the part. But just
Mm,
like what Colette's saying, we still have our lives, we still have our preferences. I mean, I'm voting in this presidential election, and I have a strong preference as far as who's going to be
mm,
president. But
mm,
it's not. You can have those preferences and do all of that, but what you and I are pointing to, and Katie's pointing to, is that you can have this causeless well-being, this causeless okayness in the midst of whatever the thoughts are, whatever
yeah,
the preferences are. You can still find that okayness.
yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Yay! This
So
was so
glad we
fun,
got to talk
Colette.
about our mutual love of Katie and her work. And yeah, hopefully people will enjoy it. And if they don't know Katie, they're going to check her out. So thank you
Yay!
so much. I'm just going to stop the recording now.